In compliance with the Open Publics Meeting Act, Deputy Clerk Pamela Dimick announced that this is a regularly scheduled meeting pursuant to the resolution adopted on January 2nd, 2018, and a meeting notice published in the Hunterdon County Democrat issue of January 11th, 2018. A copy of the agenda for this meeting was forwarded to the Hunterdon County Democrat, Times of Trenton, Star Ledger, Courier News, posted on the bulletin board, and filed in the clerk's office on November 6, 2018.
Okay, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, are there any agenda items?
Yes, under announcements, we want to add the Parks and Recreation Committee are running a bus trip into New York City on Saturday, December 8th. The bus will depart from the municipal parking lot at 10 a.m. and arrive back around 10 p.m. You have the day to explore the city and soak up the holiday festivities. Full details and sign-up are available through the township website. See news flash article or Parks and Recreation Committee page. Deadline for the sign-up is November 18th. Seats are limited and will fill up quickly, so sign up now. And also under special discussions A, we're going to add number 4, the letter dated November 6, 2018 from Princeton Hydro on the 319H grant expiration date and second no-cost time extension request.
Thank you. Okay, the announcements. There's a recycling container in the municipal lobby for plastics collections for Trex. The township is trying to collect 500 pounds or more. For specific plastics to acquire a bench for township-maintained property, please see the website for more information.
Mayor, may I jump in just for a second, just to announce that we're up to 510 pounds as of today.
Wow.
So we've made the goal. If the township wants to continue and collect more benches from Trex, a different organization will have to take the lead, and we'll need a different facilitator.
Well, congratulations. That's a lot of trash.
It is.
Yeah. Okay. So if there's any volunteers who want to take on the next 500 pounds.
I thought the church was doing that.
Yeah, they might be interested in.
Okay.
Okay, item B, Hunterdon County dates of interest, the Hazardous Waste Day, November 17th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., and the Electronic Waste Recycling Day, November 10th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Both events take place at the County Complex on Route 12. Again, see our website for more information. Clausen House, operating as East Amwell Museum, is now open for general public within the hours on Saturdays and Sundays from 1 to 4 p.m.
Just as an FYI, the attendance has been greater than expected at Clausen House. It's been very well attended since it opened.
Item D, free radon kits are available to residents at the Hunterdon County Health Department at Complex Building 1, office location from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. daily, and there's a phone number to call. Municipal offices will be closed on November 12th for Veterans Day and on November 22nd and 23rd for the Thanksgiving holiday. The holiday tree lighting is scheduled for Saturday, December 1st from 4:30 to 6 p.m. at the municipal building. And the new East Amwell website is up and running. If anyone has any comments, good or bad, please direct them to Allison Castellano at Allison_Wright@hotmail.com. Okay. Okay, now it's time for an update from our CFO.
First item would be the ordinance to amend the dog licensing fee. As I reported earlier, with the increase that we had with the new dog catcher, we're not gonna have enough money, we're not gonna be able to keep up with us, so we're gonna have to increase the fees.
Is that in our packet?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Is that later in the?
Yes, we want to
Okay.
introduce later.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so is there any discussion? I think we discussed this last meeting.
How did you come up with $10.80?
That was the old fee.
That's the old fee.
Oh, that's the old one?
Yep.
Okay. And I'm sorry, so what's the new one?
1580.
Yeah, we'll discuss it more when we introduce it, but essentially the costs of the ACO, the Animal Control Office, has gone up significantly. Also, there's new requirements for mailing to pet owners, and that postage obviously costs money. So we'll talk about that more when we introduce that ordinance.
All right. We'll go to the best practices survey. I did send out copies to you all earlier. I did change one of the answers from a no to a yes. I took a webinar on this yesterday, and one of the questions, I took very literal, and when we went over this in the seminar, they said, it was question number 45, it said, do you have a planner on staff? To me, that means that you have an employee that's a planner. It said if you actually had a consultant that you hired, that would count as a yes too, so I changed the answer. Either way, we're well into the zone where we're gonna get 100% of our last final state aid payment. The reason we do this is that they wanna make sure, if we don't pass this, they deduct some of our state aid from the last payment.
And this is an annual
This is an annual
checklist.
thing. This one was actually really big. Normally the questions are 20, 30, this one was 61 questions.
Wow. Okay. Well, I reviewed it, and that was the one that I caught. I wanted to
Yeah.
question was, there was also one about when you outsource or shared service with construction.
Mhm.
I thought we could have answered it in the affirmative, even though it's an outsourced service, we still are essentially accountable for it. I'll try to get you the exact number on that one. I
Well,
don't.
let me know, because actually I have to file, I was gonna file this as soon as I'm done here, because it is due on Monday.
Okay,
And once I file, I can't change my answers.
okay.
So if you want something to change before I leave, I need to know.
Well, I don't think we
mean,
need,
we're
yeah, we
fine.
don't, yeah, we're fine, we
We're
don't
good.
need to
We're
change
well
it now,
into
but
the-
I think it might be worth just revisiting in the future, just to see how to interpret that question differently. How many years have we been doing this? Do you know?
I think since I've been on the committee.
It's been, I think it's like
5 or
8
6
years.
8 years? Does anyone have any questions on the checklist? Okay.
That'll get filed, even done here. Okay, there is a change order for the Clausen House. I did a certificate of availability of funds, but it's basically for video recorder, camera, monitor, run the wiring that's required. And that's the additional cost of $3,775.
And that's the resolution in the packet?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a resolution on the table for $3,775 to install a 1080p NVR video recorder, 4-megapixel camera, 21-inch LED monitor with 3 feet of HDMI cable, run the wiring, install the devices, and make all necessary connections with materials listed above, and add a receptacle to the existing switch receptacle in living room.
Is this money coming out of the Open Space Trust Fund?
Yes it is, because I have $15 left in grant.
Well, yes and no. It is, but assuming we get the grant, which we're expected to get, that grant money up to around 30,000, I think, is going to go back into the Open Space Trust Fund. So in effect, we're loaning against the grant. And I spoke to Jim last week, and he expects us to get the grant. There's just been a hold up on all the grants this year, but hopefully it'll come in December.
Okay.
Okay, is there a motion to approve this resolution?
I'll move to approve the resolution for the change order for Clausen House.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I'm just gonna give you another update on where we are in the budget. Which will bring us to the budget transfers. These are in areas that we already need money in, and areas that I'm gonna anticipate that we're gonna need money before the end of the year.
So were those areas noted on this handout?
Not on that,
Oh,
no.
okay.
Land use administration, is that the planning board?
Which one here? The administrator, up top, the administration salary and wage?
No, land use
Oh, land,
administration.
yes, that's the planning board.
Excuse me, we can't hear, the microphone's more, all of you.
Is that better?
Okay, essentially, you're recommending that we transfer $15,000 from several accounts into several others?
Yes.
For some reason I don't have that one.
It's in
Oh, is it in here?
yeah, it's in the packet, right behind me.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. What's the status of the, when we remove the money out of these accounts, are we okay with those accounts?
Oh, yes, we
With
have
what's
to be,
left?
yes.
Okay. So land, yeah, I'd like to further David's question there on land use administration.
That's the title that we have right now in the Edmund system. It's basically the planning board.
And why is it $10,500, I guess, over budget at this point?
Well, what you did was you combined the planning board and the Board of Adjustment, but that was done after we had already had the budget going into this, and everything that Terry gave me was being charged to the planning board.
Oh, I see.
So instead of coming out of the half and half, I've been taking everything from the planning board, so I'm just moving actually technically money from the zoning board salary and wage and putting it over into planning board.
Okay.
When we combined the two, we left the two budgets separate. So the planning board had a separate budget, the zoning board of adjustment had a separate budget. Nothing's really being charged to the zoning board of adjustment because it got merged out of existence. So the planning board picked up the zoning board duties, and now they're in effect drawing from that zoning board budget. So really, at the end of the year, we should look at both of them combined and see where we are.
Yeah, because
And
in
then next year, we'll combine both of
2019, I
them.
will combine them, but
Yeah.
since we had already been charging to the two before you decided to combine them, I wanted to leave it the same way.
Right.
Okay, and then there was also a resolution to cancel some bond interest to surplus?
Yes, do I need this one approved first, or do you
I
can go
move
with
the resolution of transfers, 18, whatever the number is.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
I
Thank you.
just have a couple other little things to go over. I just want to make you aware of this, the state now is offering some kind of a tiered network plan for health benefits. For municipalities to participate, they would have to pass a resolution. Basically, the prices are a little bit better, and your employees get a incentive from the state to join. I don't believe it's mandatory, but if you want to offer it to your employees, you have to pass a resolution. So what I did was just give you a copy of the email I received, the back of information, and I did a little Excel spreadsheet on our current bill, and if everybody had changed over, what the savings would be.
And where is
That's
that?
just, this is just kind of an FYI.
Are you you're circulating that now? Okay.
And
So-
when do we have to make that decision?
Not sure if it says in here. Yes, I guess for not, prior to January 1st.
Okay, so we can decide at the
Yes.
next, okay.
And lastly, I would like to set up a meeting to start discussing the budget. If we could do it before the next, the meeting, like an hour earlier, if possible.
December's meeting?
Yes.
Okay, with
Just-
that.
Preliminary meeting to get an idea what direction we want to go to.
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
that's what we did last year.
That's what we did last year.
Why don't we do that? So we'll have a special 1-hour meeting
Mhm.
prior to
Prior
the
to, yep.
the December meeting. Does that seem to be a conflict with anyone? Okay. I'll move forward in that direction.
That's all I have.
Okay, the resolution to cancel the bond interest of $888.58 to surplus. I have a motion to approve that resolution.
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay, item 6, special discussion. We're going to continue a discussion regarding the 319H grant with Princeton Hydro.
Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
Okay.
Okay. Why don't I start? Tell me if I misstate where I think we are before we move forward. So we've had several correspondence with the state amongst ourselves, and essentially where we are is, at this point, there's no further extensions beyond January,
That's correct.
unless we
Fight for it.
lobby and fight for it through various agencies and elected officials, which
Mm-hmm.
may or may not happen. So, given that and where we are in terms of work, I know that we had an interim email exchange, Steve, where I said, go ahead as planned. Did you take any action? Did you
Right.
acquire any
We
plans?
started in terms of trying to solicit the plant material
Yeah.
for the work that Jason had requested with the existing rain gardens and the swale, which is that planted feature that's adjacent to the upper basin, the large basin. So we went through and we have gotten some preliminary costs. It's a little bit less than what I had thought. Probably gonna come in like closer to about like $6,000 or $7,000, but we haven't fixed the total amount of material. We could up that, ask for more plant material. The problem is that right now, none of the nurseries have enough material. Plus, on top of that, as I had mentioned in the correspondence, that I wouldn't, we've already had one frost, and I would not, even if we could get all the material, I would not recommend putting it in at this time.
Could we issue a purchase order for material and then pick it up in the spring when it's available?
Yes, DEP did tell us, Jack and I were on the phone with them, that we could go ahead and purchase all the material that is needed as long as we invoice them in advance of January the 14th or 15th, the last date of the grant. So they were fine with that. I was upfront with them, said that the planting would be done after the termination of the grant. They were fine with that. So we could go ahead and do that, and I could finalize, cost for the plant material.
And how about the labor to install that plant material? Would that be,
The labor to install it, we could do it a couple of different ways. We could try to get volunteers, as we did for one of the two rain garden plantings, the smaller plantings. Or look to see, what it would cost either with Princeton Hydro, staff, and maybe some public works personnel, doing it. But bottom line, you're probably looking at a full day. If it was done by, professionals, probably a full day, four-person crew could get all the plant material in time, in a day.
and we couldn't kind of pre-buy that labor as part of the grant?
That could be done as well.
good.
Yeah, that could be part of the, as long as the invoice is submitted and it's up front in terms of what's being done and where that money would be spent. But I haven't put together a budget on that, but it would probably be, for something that size to get it done in a day, probably a four-person crew. If we had volunteers, like we did, even with a bunch of, like the Boy Scouts, we planted probably, I think it was close to 2,000 plants in the span of about a morning. So it can go pretty quickly.
In your opinion, do we have any exposure if we just went that far, where we ordered the plant material and pre-purchased essentially the labor to do it in the spring?
Now, I mean, I would check in with DEP one more time just to confirm, what they had told us originally was still on the table. But I don't think there'd be any exposure, any downside on that. We would definitely be upfront with them. They would have to be invoiced before the 15th or the 14th, whatever the last date is.
Did you have any other?
I really
comments?
feel that it would, it's to the benefit of the town to make at least one more attempt with DEP, with perhaps some backing of, our district legislators. DEP will listen to that. If you read the letter, I don't really feel, particularly given the fact that even they, up until August the 15th or so, they were also under the impression that it was a 4-year project. So I think we were all working under that, false due date, but I think it would still be worthwhile pushing for it. And we can still proceed just with an understanding that the termination date is the 14th or 15th of January 2019. But there's nothing lost to be at least giving it one more shot with them. It's not, it's not state money, it's federal money. What the state will do with it, what DEP will do with it, they'll probably put it into a big bucket and then redistribute it. It has to be used for this type of work. It can't go into general fund because it's dedicated through the Section 319H of the Clean Water Act. So it's not going to be used in some other way other than to fund another project of this type.
Did I read the DEP letter correctly when they seemed to indicate that they didn't think we could complete the meditation garden by the end? Was that the
Yeah,
reason they turned down the extension?
In part, right, and there's really no grounds for that. That's a job that can be done in less than a week. So say counting backwards from an April plant, say like a late April planting, early May planting, so the ground is soft but it's not soggy. Even with having to put it out to bid, would still provide ample amount of time to bid it, get it passed by resolution, and then have a contractor on site to do the work. So that I didn't follow, and then that would still give at least a month, if not more, to evaluate the plantings.
Well, without a commitment to extend, it's hard to then do the engineering and design work you need in order to go out to bid.
Right, and honestly, like I said last time I was here, I would not. Why spend the money doing that if it's not going to be implemented? It doesn't. To me, it doesn't make any sense. So I think that we can fight for an extension. It would have to be that's something that would be done quickly, though, because with the holidays, DEP is definitely going to slow down as we get closer to the holiday season, particularly into the latter part of December. But if you don't have a dog in the fight, you're not going to win anything. So it's, do you want to go after it or not? And my suggestion would be to go after it, because I do feel that it could be totally accomplished, and that was our original game plan. I don't really like planting late in the season. We've had our greatest success with these types of projects when it's a spring planting.
So it seems we have two paths. One is sort of maximize and finish up what we can do under this current extension.
Correct.
And then secondly is, as a committee, determine how much further we want to attempt to go
Right.
and how much kind of effort we can. My sense of the read of the tone of that letter was they didn't seem very receptive, at least in the letter.
Right.
To an extension. So I think that latter discussion, I think I might want to ask the committee to defer that to our executive discussion, since it is contract related. But as far as the earlier statement, the earlier path, I don't see any problem with at least procuring, as long as they follow procurement guidelines and it's allowable to pre-purchase, and I guess Margaret left. I guess we'll just confirm with Margaret that we can do it.
Right.
Is just purchase the materials, or at least put the order in for the materials, receive them in the spring, and also include the labor to install that.
Right. And we will get written confirmation from DEP that that is acceptable before we proceed any further.
Okay.
But I think, because they've already given us a guidance that that would be acceptable,
Right.
I would say at least do that. And then it's up to Township Committee to determine whether or not they want to pursue the additional extension.
Yeah. So we'll take it as two paths. We'll proceed with the sort of the finish what we've started with the materials, and then we'll have a discussion in the executive session is about how we want to proceed in a larger sense.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? No? Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, the next discussion is item B, helipad at the Ridge at Backbrook. So I think we got a letter advising us that the Ridge is seeking approval from, I guess, I don't know what authority it is, I guess it's the
NJDOT.
NJDOT, to, I guess, implement a helipad. And I know this topic came up before. I don't recall, I think it predated me as to being on committee at least, as to what some of the discussion was and what the resolution was, and if the township took any action. I don't recall. David, do you have any history as to?
No, it was before my time as well, but the helipad was not included in the original approval.
Okay.
I spoke with John Riley about this. They did come before the planning board
Already?
a few years ago.
Oh, a few years ago,
They
okay.
came before the planning board. I have those materials, I'm going through them. I'm not sure how relevant it's gonna be right now, but they did come to the planning board. They did not receive a warm reception from the planning board, and ultimately, they went away and just dropped it.
Last time, right.
My understanding, and I've been asking around, and I intend to devote a lot more attention to this, it's just the solar ordinance took a lot of time, but my understanding is we no longer have approval rights over this, that the law changed since the last time. And therefore, the Ridge simply needs approval of the state. They do not need approval of East Amwell. And our only rights legally, as I understand it, and I'm going to confirm all of this, but this is what I've been told by two people, one a freeholder and another one on the planning board, is that we have 60 days to comment. The township can comment, but we do not have approval rights. So I plan on focusing on this, but my gut reaction at this point is we're probably looking at a two-pronged attack here. One is the township submit comments, but we also get as many residents as humanly possible to send letters, emails, etc. And we'll coordinate getting the appropriate people to whom you should write or email. We may even put together a form letter, assuming that doesn't create any issues for the township that people can use. Second, there are other routes that one can pursue to change the course of what appears to be destiny in New Jersey, and we're gonna have to think about how to pursue those other routes. The township does have friends. That became quite evident during the course of getting the library to come back. We're gonna have to see what we can do through our various resources. But over the next couple of weeks, I plan on paying a lot of attention to this and figuring out how we could stop this. I'm not adverse to helicopters, I'm not adverse to helipads, but they should be in the right place. And the ridge isn't the right place. Hot air balloons freak out horses. Helicopters are gonna do a real job. When you get a helicopter flying over your house at a high level, your house vibrates. I don't wanna think what it's going to do to the residents who live around the golf course, having that helicopter come in at lower. Now, I imagine it can hover up high and then drop down, because helicopters can do that, but nonetheless, it's invariably gonna impact the homes around the ridge. So I'm not sure that I have anything more to say about it at this point, other than I think it's the next big issue we have to tackle. I viewed the solar, for reasons I'll discuss later, as a big issue that had to be tackled right away, but I think this helipad is the next big issue we have to tackle. And if people have thoughts about that, we're gonna have an open public session shortly, and I'd be happy to hear them, or you should feel free to call or email us if you have any thoughts. I'll try to get something to the VIP so we can get it out in the VIP also, as a way to getting the word out to the residents. I'll figure out what we can and cannot do legally on the webpage. We can put it on the webpage. And then it's gonna be word of mouth, Facebook, et cetera, to try to get this out. But I doubt that the township committee alone is gonna be able to do this. I think it's gonna, if we're gonna stop this, it's gonna take a lot of residents writing and emailing to get this stopped. And I'm assuming most people will want it stopped.
So I think the first step, Rick, and it sounds like you're at least volunteering, is to find out if we have any ability or authority in this space. If it's really clearly out of our hands, then I think the more soft sort of approaches are the way to go. So, does anyone else have any comments? Okay. Mr. Miller has to leave for about an hour. He'll be back. Hopefully less. He has an appointment, but he'll be back. So I think that's the next step. Maybe you could report back at the next meeting, Rick, as to the status and what actions we can and should take at that time.
Look, we may have to get our township comments before.
Okay.
That clock started running about 3 weeks ago, I believe. So we may have to figure out what the township committee is gonna do sooner rather than later. But
The clock
Yes.
started when they sent that letter, is that
my understanding, I was told we have 60 days
from the
once we
date
got
of
the
that
letter.
letter?
Yeah,
Okay,
to submit comments. And when that letter came probably 3 weeks ago.
right.
So we will, I know some people I can talk to and probably can get some more information on this pretty quickly.
So would you be the aggregator of comments from the committee?
Yeah,
Okay, so
Absolutely.
I ask everyone on the township committee to read that letter and provide any technical and also emotional comments back to Mr. Wolf. And again, anyone in the audience, if they have any comments they'd like us to include, please send them via email to Rick Wolf. You can copy me, and just don't send it to the entire township committee. And we'll make sure they're distributed to all to review. Okay, any other, again, we'll have an open public so we can hear from the public on that topic if anyone's here to discuss that. Okay, item number 7, standing committee reports. I don't think we have anyone to interview.
Yes.
Oh, hi. Oh, please come forward. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Good evening.
Hi. Tell us your name, please.
Chantal Napoleon.
Oh, Chantal, okay. How are you?
Good, how are you?
And I believe you were interested in the,
Environmental and
Environmental and
Recycling
Recycling,
Committee.
right. Okay.
Mhm. I've been living in East Amwell for about 4 years now. We absolutely love it here. We moved here because we appreciate the beauty of our neighborhood. We came from northern New Jersey, so it's a much quieter, more relaxed atmosphere down here, and I just want to do my part to help preserve the beauty of it and keep it clean.
Can you tell us about your background?
Sure. I work as a project manager for a pharmaceutical company in Bridgewater, so I lead an internal team in the execution of marketing materials for the products that we make. And I have experience volunteering at an animal shelter up in northern New Jersey. I helped clean the cages, walk the dogs, feed the animals, help any customers interested in adopting. And I also organized Toys for Tots a few times at my previous job. And I helped organize fundraising initiatives for a charity in Bridgewater that funds activities for children with the recurrence of cancer. So I try to do my part and make a positive contribution to society, and want to do the same for the township.
Good, well, thank you. Yeah.
Sure.
Any comments or questions?
Well, I certainly know we need people on recycling, that's for sure. And we have basically two environmental. We have environmental commission and we have a green team. And we're just starting the green team. We're getting that up and running.
Great.
But I think there's definitely a slot for you on at least one of those committees.
Sure, yeah, I'm open to wherever I'm needed. I can be of service.
Do you have a preference?
Well, I'm very adamant about recycling in my home, so I'm very particular about making sure that things are recycled properly, so I'd probably be a really good fit on that team, but I'm open to wherever I'm needed most. The Environment Committee, I'm not sure who organizes the cleanup days on the roadside, but I'd like to be a part of that.
I think that's a blend between
Is it? Okay.
recycling and environmental. They kind of work together on that one.
Okay. So I'm open to either of those.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you that Allison Castellano, who's in the back, who's
Oh,
on our
great.
recycling, has you already in her sight.
Oh, yeah, I drive by you every day with the dogs. Oh, yeah. Yes, I
So I don't think you're gonna have any issue on recycling.
do. Oh, good, okay.
So if you're okay, I'm happy to appoint you to the recycling committee tonight.
Sure, why
Um,
not?
And then what I'd like to do is just as we're still looking at the green team and how the makeup of that.
Okay.
And then as we make appointments to those environmental and the green team, we'll consider you for that too. But
Okay,
absolutely, I'm happy to appoint you to the recycling committee immediately.
great. Happy to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Nice to
very
meet
much.
you.
If you're,
Nice to meet you.
we need a motion for her to, the resolution, to appoint her,
I don't think we need.
you sure?
No.
I think
Appointments
I
are,
think it's the mayor.
yeah,
Okay.
appointments
Alrighty.
are at the pleasure of the mayor. Okay. Okay, item C, Prospect, number one, the Martin, Block 1, Lot 1 in East Amwell Township, and Block 45, Lot 3 in Delaware Township. Cost share, see the 1030 packet from Prospect.
Catherine Fullerton, the FOSBAC administrator, would have been here tonight, but it would have necessitated her hiring a babysitter. And since this is pretty simple and straightforward, I said to her, just save the money, you don't need to hire the babysitter, I would just go through
Okay.
it. Basically, there is a piece of land that straddles Delaware Township and East Amwell Township that's being put into preservation. Only a small portion of it is in East Amwell Township, and the township would contribute $3,375 toward putting that small piece into preservation. It's not a significant amount of money, and we just need to approve that this evening. We need to approve a resolution this evening, which is attached to the memo we got.
Okay, so it's,
I'll move the approval of this resolution.
I will second it.
is there any further discussion? So Mr. Martin was on Fospic, right?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Approval of the minutes. So the minutes are a little challenging right now. Due to Terry's absence, we have a little bit of a backlog in minutes and our review of those minutes. So we're going to defer the minutes until next meeting and make sure they're accurate. Okay? And if anyone cares, we have those meetings are recorded, both audio and video. So we'll get them out as soon as possible, but there's some, just a backlog right now in the administration of the minutes. So. Okay, at this point, I'd like to open to the public. Is there anyone in the public has any comments? I have a motion, by the way, to open?
Move to open to the public?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're open. Any comments in the public? Yes. Fran. And by the way, just as we're fine tuning the delivery of the audio. So anyone who has any comments should come forward, sit at the table and speak into the microphone. And if anyone in the audience has anything to say, please come to the microphone and speak. When they're speaking in the back, it washes out what's being said, and it's difficult for transcription. That's part of the problem we're having with transcribing some of the minutes. Okay.
Frances Gavigan, 123 Wurtsville Road. Regarding the helipad, I was at those hearings when the Ridge wanted to have some relief on their water sampling and different things, and the helipad came up, at which point there was discussion that there wasn't a whole lot that could be done. However, there was a fair amount of testimony that should be in the audios for those meetings that could be mined either by the township or the public as to what were the concerns and the issues and the risk to the public of the helipad, which was also basically a marketing tool for the golf course as opposed to other things. There had been an argument proposed that, oh, well, it could be a safety thing, an emergency place for the rescue squad, which was not the case because there is already another kind of place. So there's a lot of things that people can do from the public side, but also data that can be mined by the committee or Rick in his spare time between 4 and 5 a.m. In that there was a similar issue that came up in Somerset County, and that involved litigation, not so much on a golf course, but with Tucker Johnson wanting to be able to fly in cattle buyers to his farm, and the people in the Pluckaman and the adjoining area with somewhat deeper pockets than East Amwell had a lot to say about it. But that litigation and that information might provide useful legal insights into it. And I suspect that our planner company, Banish Associates, was involved in that because he's the planner for that area. So, you don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. Things that I've learned over the 23 years of being here is it never hurts to have a public face and discussions with people out there speaking about things. I can remember there was a point, and David, you might also, where when there was a challenge for farming that horses and horse trailers, they went to Trenton, they made the evening news. There have been meetings out on Wurtsville Road where all the freeholders came to see what the impact could be, and that was with the bridge, and we got relief. My experience or observation is the squeaky wheel, the loudest voice, the people that might come back next year and vote when the state elections are coming about, it can't hurt. And our state senator Turner is also a pretty powerful force at the state level who might be able to be either recruited or discussed with as to why there is a special case that can be made for East Amwell not having such a thing. The cost-benefit analysis of, well, it'd be nice to sell the shares in the Ridge that haven't sold in 25 years versus the impact on residents, local farmers, and things like that. And there may be some value in sort of a local, public, private, whatever, action and things in that regard. I know I have records and notes from that point in time, and I believe the maps showed the location for the helipad. And there was also an application when he wanted to have the cottages, you know, the 4,000 square foot cottages, the helipad was going to be sort of right up there too. So there's a fair amount of information that the public and the committee can data mine fairly efficiently. And what was the date? My question is, what was the date on which the letter was submitted, day zero on that 60-day clock, so that we as the public know when to get our tiki torches or cameras or whatever and make a submission?
I can get you the date, Francis, the specific, I can get you the specific
Okay,
date.
yeah, and things like that, or maybe put that on the website. There are likely to be, before that 60 days is up, the people to whom the application was submitted are likely to be having a public meeting, and I don't think a presence from interested taxpayers would be something that folks would be adverse to doing, and just sort of showing up and letting people know that it's not just Far Hills and Pluckerman that cares about the impact. It's also East Amwell and maybe the Sourlands and other that, because the impact on all of this is so close to the Ridge and the birds and the flyway, and we've got bald eagles in the area and pileated woodpeckers and other kinds of nesting grassland birds on Cider Mill that could be unduly disturbed, and that there might be a role for, you know, not only citizens, but the environmental commission or committee to commission, okay, I keep getting corrected on that, to put in or to consider a environmental impact that then could be shared with the township and possibly with the the governing agency, New Jersey DOT. That's just my 2 cents worth, and I can go dig in my
Thank you.
back pocket.
Anyone else in the public? Yes.
Hi, Noreen Bailey, 129 Backbrook Road. I was also involved in all the meetings when they were talking about the helicopter pad and everything. In the records, there should be a binder I created comparing golf courses around that was equal in status, as Joel said his golf course was, and discussion and shows what the amenities are, whether they had helicopter pads. I still remember, the one in Springfield, Waterstraw. They did have a helicopter pad, and they got rid of it because of safety issues. And I spoke to a number of places, but there is a binder somewhere that I turned over, and it has a listing of different golf courses and helicopter pads. I also had, and turned in, we had sheets up in Carousel and the different little establishments, sign-up sheets for people that do not want a helicopter pad here. And that was turned over to the township at the time. So there was, this room was pretty much filled, if you remember. The town was totally against it. And, you know, I think if we have enough time, you would get that response again. I'm sorry to hear that we only have 60 days and that we've already lost 3 weeks,
Well,
roughly.
We have 60 days as a township to submit comments. I don't think the DOT is making the decision at the end of 60 days. There's just a comment period.
Yeah, but
Submit written
but it'd be
comments.
great to get
Yeah.
more people involved and get it, you know, but like I said, there was a big outcry last time, and there's stuff in the records. Like I said, I don't know whether I made a copy, it's been a number of years, but I can go back and check. We had people sign up to say that they didn't want a helicopter pad, and they were using it, like Francis said, as a safety thing for the ambulance and stuff, to use first responders. And we had people sign up and say they would let a helicopter land on their property if need be for emergency, you know, so that was blown out the window and stuff, so,
Yeah, I think they can anyway, if it's an
Yeah,
emergency.
right.
I've had 2 of them land on my farm.
right.
Yeah, law and
Right.
enforcement.
For medical.
But that's what they were trying to get it passed by as a safety thing. And we also spoke up before about the environmental impact. There was a number of people that were very concerned about that. So, you know, hopefully we have enough time to get everybody involved again.
Well, if we
But-
could do 2 things. One is, Pam, if you could look into finding,
Krista's here.
oh, Krista's here? Oh, okay, yeah, if you could look into finding these records. Do you know, could you at least dig up when it might have been that puts to narrow?
I don't remember what the year was when they first.
I have some records. I can get you. the-
Yeah, I'll look
I have
at home
records
too.
already.
I think I created a copy of that binder and stuff,
Great.
but I will take a look and
Yeah,
stuff.
Let's
but-
resurrect those.
But that was
those
all
documents.
turned in to the township at that time,
That's good information.
you know?
Thank you.
But
Yeah.
I don't
Thank
know
you.
if I was videotaping that. If I haven't, I'll turn that into.
Yes,
Good evening.
hi.
Jamie Atkinson, resident 201 Wurtsville Road. And I also just want to kind of piggyback on what my neighbors have said about the helipad. And I'm encouraged, I hope I'm reading it right, that this committee is dead set against putting a helipad at the Ridge Golf Course. Because I think
Absolutely,
that
yeah.
would clearly go against
I mean, I'm
this-
speaking for myself. I don't know, you know.
Understood, and
absolutely.
I wasn't necessarily looking for
Yeah.
confirmation. I just
Okay.
hope that I'm reading that right. There are a lot of neighbors around there that would like to be involved in any way that we can, and I hope that you all can take an active role and facilitate in any way how we communicate, who we go talk to. I'm a little concerned that somehow something has just changed in the laws that may take the township's role, either the planning committee, out of the picture. Is there a way that special meetings can be called in some way? As Trish said, are there other places we need to go then, other people? I would look to you all and your resources in being able to try and disseminate that information in some way. And obviously, there are lots of local citizens that would be like, not just to receive that, but to try and play a role, obviously, in facilitating some way.
Yeah, I think the first step is we're going to determine if we have any role to play in jurisdiction now. If we do,
Okay,
then we'll have one clear path.
sure.
If we don't, then we have a different path, which.
Right, right. Hopefully, the path of mouthpiece, though, too,
Yeah.
here. Tonight, I don't think a lot of people know about this at all. So if there's a way to begin to amplify and speed up that process.
Yeah, it just entered our purview.
This may be an issue that a mailer goes out from the township to all the residents. That's not cheap for us to do, but in the end, that may be how we communicate it.
Okay,
Because I do think that volume can help a lot,
right,
but we don't have a single medium that hits all the residents. The VIP has 400 or 500, some of whom aren't even East Amwell.
mhm,
We have Facebook pages that hit some, but it may be that we wind up putting together something and send it to all the residents.
terrific. Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we will
Do a
definitely,
postcard, that's cheaper.
Depends how much information we have to put on
yeah,
it.
yeah.
But
Well,
uh,
and they're even personal carriers. I mean, if there's something we can produce, and a number of us are delighted to deliver things. I do recall one event that Trish referred to, and that the bridge out on Wurtsville. I think the township very effectively worked to change that. And
I'm Francis.
Francis, forgive me. Yeah. Forgive me. Francis worked and showed that the township could play a real positive role in changing theirs. So,
And Jamie, you're located at ground zero on both of those.
unfortunately,
The bridge and the helipad.
that's right. Well, fortunately, actually, we love where we are.
Yeah.
But a helipad won't make it any better.
Well, we're committed to finding out what our next steps are.
Terrific.
Both sort of officially and then sort of other routes, and then we'll disseminate that information.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else in the public? Yes, please come forward.
Good evening, Joe Wolfgang from 26 Zion Road, and was here last month. So I had a chance to watch the video from last month's meeting. It's a good reason not to come up here because you get you're stuck on video forever. But I did pick up a few things, and I did want to make one correction. Something I said about Joan McGee's situation with the township. I incorrectly spoke. Her contract was not renewed. It was how things ended up. So I want to correct myself for what I said there. Also, Rick Spiegel was speaking a little bit when I was addressing the town, and I might have belittled his service to the township, and I just want to say I appreciate the fact that he served 3 years on township committee, and anybody who sits up there for 3 years deserves full respect, and I appreciate what he did. And the fact that he volunteered his time. So, Rick, you're not here, unfortunately, but thanks. Any rate, a few comments. I did have a lot of things written, but obviously tonight there's pressing things affecting the town. I was on the planning board, sitting up there when Joel Gordon came before the town trying to get approval for the helipad, and it was pretty, I think he tried to intimidate us, and that he had a professional video crew come in. Francis, you're good, but this guy had a thing that looked like it was ABC News, and just, really pounded us with questions and suggested he wouldn't be able to pay his taxes, and he paid a lot of taxes to the town, and if we didn't approve the helipad, he referenced other golf courses like Trump up in Bedminster that had this, and therefore he couldn't be competitive. But the planning board was able to vote on it and squash it effectively, and that was the end of it, despite what I would call the intimidation. So I'm a little concerned. I just heard a few things that I picked up on, that it's already been known for 3 weeks that this is alive again. We have a great website. Thanks for putting that together, and that would be a great place. I assume the town can mention that and promote it, promote what's happened, make people aware through the website. That would be great. It sounds like we've lost a bit of time. I heard.
Well, let me just comment.
Yeah.
We just got the letter. I just saw it a few days ago. So
Right.
as a township committee, I don't know when it was dated, but the letter just got to us. So although the date might be earlier, it just got to us for review.
Okay.
So, we're starting now.
Okay. But the clock starts when he wrote it? Is that?
We don't know.
Okay.
Mr. Wolf said it started the day it was written, I guess, when it's written. But
So-
I inquired and I was told that the 60 days starts the day of the letter. Again,
Yeah.
over the course of the next week, I'll figure out exactly what our rights are.
where we
Yeah.
are, right.
So, that kind of implies that somebody could write it and sit on it for a month and kill half the period
Yeah.
right there.
I think one fact we don't have right now is the date of the letter.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
in our, can anyone access the electronic?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we could
While you're doing that,
if we,
But I heard.
we could solve that question, is what the
Okay.
data in the letter
But
is.
also, I heard earlier mentioned on the FOSBEC issue about spending $375,000 for a piece of property. Was that,
No, 3,000.
okay, and I heard it wrong. Okay, that's good. Is that right, for the property by West Amwell?
The property that straddles East Amwell and Delaware Township on
Right.
Haynes Road,
Yeah,
3 acres of that are in East Amwell.
right,
The remaining 31 are in Delaware Township.
right.
East Amwell share is $3,375, I believe.
Okay, I misheard
Yeah,
that.
3,375.
$3,375.
Okay, I thought it was a much larger number.
No.
But I was going to suggest that maybe we should put some money aside for fighting this as a town. To me, it seems pretty significant. I don't know what we have as far as reserves and funds, but even engage our legal representation immediately to see what's involved. We've got professional, I know Mr. Wolf's a lawyer, but as a town, we also have lawyers that we pay to do this, and they're probably maybe held to a higher level of accountability because they're under contract to us to get this done quickly, to let us know what the story is, what changed. So I hope we can work as a town to kill this. I did have some comments from last month's meeting, just certainly watching the video, but and not to beat this thing to death, but there was one thing that we heard about was Mr. Wolf told us about the foam incident when he was in college with the dorm room, and I looked at that and I was like, it's a little strange because, and you told us about this incident, so I want to address it here. I think we have time, but it was something you were pretty proud of, that you're proud enough to tell us about it 35 years later. This, what I call a vigilante action that you took against other students. And I thought about what you did, and I got a can of spray foam. I had to use my wife's reading glasses to see what it says, but it's highly flammable material. It's use ventilation or proper respiratory protection, avoid inhalation. Extremely sticky, protect eyes, skin surfaces. First aid, eye flush with water, skin soak in soap and water, inhalation, remove to fresh air. So it's pretty nasty stuff to walk into somebody's room and attack them with, but you seem to be, that was the way you addressed the situation, and as opposed to going through proper channels, which I'm sure the university had maybe a resident advisor and dorm advisors that could work with you to fix what happened. And you got to wonder, you kind of coerced the guy Tiny to help you as well and be your bodyguard or your wingman on this situation, wondering about the consequences towards Tiny. So it wasn't the proper way to take care of things. It was kind of a shock and awe approach. And you told us you don't like bullies. That was something you said last month quite a bit. But I saw it as bullying, especially having Tiny on your right side there. So I wonder if this is what's happening on the township committee when you're up there talking to people like Mr. Sousa and other people that are coming up here. It's a bullying in a sense. You've got the power. You're up there with the microphone. You've got a different kind of Tiny with you. And I just wonder if you're dragging people along or dragging the town along this time in attacking people and taking advantage of them and hurting them. I think it's going to hurt the town. I think it's going to hurt people that want to maybe have opposing views and want to address them and feel like they're going to get spray foam sprayed in their face. It's not the way to address people. And maybe things will change now that there's a different composition for the township committee going forward. It certainly seems so far tonight it's been much more pleasant, except for me. That's great. But I hope it changes. I hope that's not the way that things are done or how things are considered to be appropriate. Something else I saw was the Princeton Hydro contract approval. That contract was voted on by township committee, as I recall. And Tim, you voted on it and approved it, and Pete Miller voted on it and approved it. So if it was a rotten contract, which Mr. Wolf called it, and you guys approved a rotten contract, is he dragging you under the bus here by saying you voted and approved a rotten contract? I kind of see that as more of the same. So I hope it doesn't keep happening. I don't think it, whatever that was, I don't think it, I'm hoping that there's a positive change going forward and we don't have spray foam getting shot in people's faces anymore. And, one other comment on the, the helipad bit is, I guess maybe we could suggest our fire department's not equipped to handle a crash. If there was a helicopter incident with JP5 jet fuel spilling, we're not, as a township, we don't have the equipment to address it safely. So maybe that's something we can use to fight it. And that was my comments. Thanks.
Thank you.
The date of the letter is October 12th.
October 12th. Thanks, David.
You have another person who wants to make
Yes,
comments?
yes, please.
All right, good evening. I'm Greg Proop. I live at 15 Laga Court. Been a resident of East Amwell for 20 years. Want to talk about the helipad. So I look back September 10th, 2008. I know I submitted a formal letter to the planning board, documenting the concerns. The one item that I'm worried about, well, one of many items, we do have animals, horses, and I think, Rick, you referenced the flightiness of horses with loud noises. So that's a fact. But more importantly, I did some calculations back in 2008. So a twin jet helicopter generates about, let's see what number I have here, about 120 decibels of noise. And calculating a flight angle, and I do live closest to the golf course up on the hill there, that's a noise that I would experience of about 100 decibels. And most people find 80 decibels annoying. 90% of the population finds 80 decibels annoying. So I just wanted to say that I do think there are safety issues. There are definitely noise and privacy issues associated with that. And overall, as close as I am to the ridge, I'd say overall for me, they've been a good neighbor, but everything gets stretched. The 4:50 in the morning, mowing, blowing, you get used to it. But it's really not what I expected, when we approved the golf course. And I just wondering how you enforce anything afterwards. And I did see that there's something called a Fly Neighborly program. At least I referenced that back in 2008. And this is something I think the township should look into. It says, this program recommends cooperation between the federal, state, and local governments, the helicopter operator, and the community, and goes as far as to suggest empowering local municipalities with airspace control. So I wouldn't say it's out of our control. It rests with the state. I think it rests with what we make it. And, I would suggest we look into that, program to see if, that's something that's still in effect. So, thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Appreciate it.
Greg, how do you spell your last name?
It's Krupa, K-R-U-P-A.
And if we want to talk some more, we
Yeah,
can call you?
absolutely. I'll give you my information. And if you want to come, just look at, the impact. I will say this. Once there was a New Jersey State Police helicopter that landed at the ridge, and the whole house was shaking, okay? And that's the type of helicopter that's going to be coming here. It's not going to be a single engine. It's going to be a dual engine, jet helicopter. And those things do make quite a bit of noise. So
Could even be, what's it called, Marine One.
it could be. All right, thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else in the public? Motion to
close to the public?
Second?
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Before we move on, could I say something?
Sure.
I'd like to just take a moment and comment. I appreciate Mr. Wolfgang coming tonight. I appreciate what he said, because Mr. Wolfgang is a perfect illustration of the problem we've been having. He shows up, he tells half the story, and then when you call him out, he says, gee, you're a bully. I take it, Mr. Wolfgang, that you find it acceptable for college freshmen to pick on a handicapped student. I guess you think that's okay. You talk about procedures the college may have had in place. You're old enough to know that in the 1980s, there were no procedures. Colleges basically said, man up and take it. That's how it was at my college. There were no procedures. This kid wasn't going to get any help. And the only thing bullies understand is an equal show of force. That's why bullies are bullies. So you come in here, you twist things, you distort things, you belittle an entire profession, which is what you did the last time you came here. Then the next meeting you come in and say, oh, this is inappropriate behavior up at the dais. It's not. You come in and you lie, you distort. I'm calling you out, and I'm going to continue to call you out. And the residents know that. And the residents spoke on Tuesday night. And now it is 5-0. You may want to pay some attention to that. That's all I have to say.
Tim, would you consider reopening to the public?
No, I don't want to get into a debate about that. If you two want to chat about it, take it offline and have a beer and talk about it, okay? But I guess one thing I would say, Joe, I mean, I've known you a while, I would just revisit the video, because I think in that video, you even suggested that you would respond violently in a situation. I don't recall the exact words you used, so you might want to just double check the video.
I would like to respond to that if you give me a second, so that the two of you guys can.
No, I don't want to get into a debate. I just want to just put it out there that you got to look at the video in context, and I urge everyone to look at the video in context. Okay. Consent agenda items, there are none. Okay, we're going to, item 11, introduction of ordinances. We have an ordinance 18-21, an ordinance amending section 92-100B3 and 92-100B6 of the Code of East Amwell Township governing conditional use standards for major solar or photovoltaic energy facilities or structures. I'd like to commend Mr. Wolf on taking the initiative on drafting this ordinance in short order. So Rick, would you walk us through it, please?
Over the past 2.5 months, I received 4 letters from solar companies. I have them with me tonight, all wanting to lease my farm for commercial solar fields. National Land Realty, Hexagon Energy, Blue Wave Solar, US Solar. 3 of these 4 letters are actually very detailed with pictures of my farms. 2 of them actually have dollar amounts. They're back. The solar companies are back. And they're looking at farms in East Amwell, because I'm sure if I'm getting it for my farm, other farms are getting it. So I decided to spend some time to see whether we could beef up our solar ordinance, because our solar ordinance as it exists right now allows commercial solar fields on our farms. We have one on Route 604. If you want to see what one looks like, drive down 604. I don't want more commercial solar farms on our commercial solar fields on our farms. So I began poking around. I spoke to counsel at the SADC. I spoke to Tamara Lee, who's a resident, very smart, who knows this stuff really well. I spoke to Don Riley, did a lot of research. It turns out that in 2009, New Jersey was encouraging solar development and got carried away, and basically enacted a law that allowed these commercial solar fields to be put on farms. Starting in 2011, as part of the examination of its master energy program, New Jersey began to conclude that there's plenty enough non-farmland available for solar, that we don't need to be putting it on our farms or on other land that we'd like to preserve. The DEP did a very detailed report in 2017, and I quote from it in this ordinance. This ordinance, actually, the legal part of it is very little. Most of the ordinance is the background. You may want to read it. It's interesting. But the DEP put out a report in 2017 called Solar Siting Analysis Update, and it divided New Jersey, all the land into New Jersey, into 3 buckets. Preferred, non-preferred, and we don't know yet. And in the non-preferred land, meaning lands where they prefer you not locate solar fields, they included farm. The preferred tend to be urban areas, commercial areas, and the conclusion of the report was that if we want to achieve our goals, our solar, our clean energy goals in New Jersey, we could do that and use just a teeny tiny fraction of our preferred land. We don't need to touch the non-preferred. There is, I'm told, in the works, a revamp of our master energy plan, the state's master energy plan, which is supposed to be released in 2019, and I've been told by someone working on it that it is going to reach the same conclusions that the DEP reached in 2017. So what that means is that winds of change are blowing, and they are blowing in favor of not locating solar on farms. So I drafted an amendment which was reviewed by Tamara, was reviewed by the planning board attorney, Don Riley, and that's what we're introducing tonight. In layman's terms, it says you can't put a commercial solar field on a farm. And the definition of farm, hopefully I've drafted it broadly enough that the solar companies will not be able to find a loophole. We're pretty confident that we've closed all the loopholes. There are actually some loopholes in the definition of farm in our land use ordinances, and what I've attempted to do here tonight, or in this ordinance, is close those. So I viewed this as a pretty urgent matter, because if a solar company comes before the planning board before this ordinance is enacted with a completed plan, they're under the existing ordinance, and we could wind up with another solar field like we have on 604. There are two other issues associated with solar fields in my mind, and the people who helped me understand those issues are actually here tonight. They happen to live next to the solar field on 604. What I understand working with that family is, number one, those commercial solar fields have a significant adverse emotional impact on the people who live around them. So this isn't just a question of vistas. This is a question of the emotional impact these solar fields have on the people who live around them. Second, it destroys their property values. Who wants to buy a house next to a commercial solar field? And it's one thing if you buy a house on 202 in a commercial area and they put a hotel next to it. You say, okay, you bought a house in an area zoned commercial. You got to expect that you may have a gas station, a hotel. When you buy a house in farmland in East Amwell, you don't expect to have a commercial operation next to your house the next day. And that expectation is perfectly reasonable. So it has a financial impact on people's most important investment for most people in their life is their house. And it has an emotional impact. And I got the experience that firsthand working with the family who lives next to the solar field on 604. So we're introducing this ordinance tonight. It will then go to the planning board on Wednesday for the planning board to review it and conclude whether or not it is consistent with our master plan. I've reviewed the master plan. I'm confident that it is. I've discussed this with Don Riley. So I have every expectation and hope that this will be approved by the planning board. Then it will come back to the township committee in December for what I hope will be a final approval. And then hopefully we will never see another commercial field on a farm in East Amwell again. That's it.
Thank you, Rick. So do I have a motion to introduce ordinance 18-21?
May I make a comment?
Can we discuss after the motion?
Okay.
So is there a motion to introduce 18-21?
I'll move.
Okay. Is there a second?
Good time.
I will second it.
Okay. Any discussion? Yeah.
Well, what I wanted to say is that this represents, to me, a significant change in the land use laws in the town, land use policies in the town. And I think that we really need a more in-depth public discussion of this issue. I think it would be useful to have the land use professionals come to a township committee meeting and reiterate the conversations that you had with them, Rick, in public. And I think it would be useful to have public input, residents' input as to what they think about this approach to dealing with the commercial solar facility issue. I mean, I agree there is an issue. I'm not sure this is the best approach. There may be a way to modify our existing ordinance to protect residents that are potentially close by. But I think fundamentally, we just need more public discussion before this is introduced or adopted, because it's a significant change to the land use policies of the town.
Let me add one thing.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm just gonna add one thing. If we don't pass this by the end of December, we have to start all over again. It's just the way it works procedurally. You can't have something like this midstream when you have a change in the composition on the township committee.
Yeah, and also, let me comment a little bit, not technically, but more of, so my first, I believe, one of the very first ordinances I was involved in on township committee was this ordinance. And there was 2 iterations of it in the spring of my first term. And I remember it was a very kind of a quick opportunity to fix it. And I thought we did a good job through the 2 iterations. And I thought, it's pretty big barriers to entry we put in place. Well, the reality is, these solar companies have totally abused our ordinance. They haven't kept up with their end of the bargain. They've been terrible to deal with. They've drugged their feet. They've changed legal entities over time, making it very difficult to police and manage them. So I don't even know if we could tidy up and add more to our current ordinance that would essentially get us people acting in good faith. These are commercial entities that want to make money. They're investment driven. They're driven by investors who don't even live here. They're just LLCs that come together, throw their money in it, put up the solar field, cash in on the SRECs, and away they go. So I hear you, David, but I do think it's time to take a firm stand that you know, these folks don't play well in our backyard, and there's no benefit to East Amwell having these on their farms. So I hear you. I'd like to introduce it tonight. We do have an opportunity for public debate when this is up for public discussion next month. So the public can come in and weigh in, and we could have the professionals there as part of that discussion. But I do think we want to get this in the works quickly so that we could abate this problem. Because as Rick said, I know I've talked to several farmers who've received these letters, and they've asked me, you know, is this a better deal than selling to a developer? You know, that kind of thing. So clearly there's folks that may take this offer, and I don't think we want to go through another situation like we have. So that's my opinion. I don't know if anyone else has any other comments.
Well, I don't dispute the issues. I simply, for me, it's a matter of procedure, and I just feel like we need more time to discuss. And Rick is correct that you'd have to start over in January, and that's a downside. But I just think taking a little more time up front will be beneficial in the long run.
Well, there'll be 4 weeks, a little more than 4 weeks for people to think about, come in, make their views known when we have the hearing on it, the public hearing in December. I have to tell you, David, I've always had a hard time reading you, and tonight's another illustration, because I'm absolutely amazed by your reaction to this. I'm amazed, I'm disappointed. It's not what I expected. I actually expected you to warmly embrace this. You're certainly entitled to your opinion, and I respect your opinion. It's not what I had expected. That is what it is. My own view is we ought to move forward with this, and we ought to get it passed by December. But obviously, there are other people on the committee who have to weigh in. That's just my view. But if we're done with discussion, I'd like to move forward with introducing it.
Yeah, the only last comment I would make is the process allows for, if we have a public hearing and there's compelling commentary to cause us to adjust or change, we can always adjust or change, and if it's significant, reintroduce. So I don't think by introducing it this evening it in any way stops debate and stops discussion. So with that, we do have a motion on the table with a second. Are we ready to vote?
The ordinance will be published in the November 15th, 2018 issue of the Hunterdon County Democrat, and the public hearing is set for the next regular Township Committee meeting on December 13th, 2018 at 7:30 p.m.
Okay, so we need to take a vote. We don't need a voice vote or a
No.
roll call on this. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
No, okay. Okay. Next is ordinance 18-22, an ordinance to amend Chapter 53, Animals of the Code of East Amwell Township, to increase the dog licensing fee. Again, this is an area that hasn't been addressed in some time, and we used to have an ACO, an animal control officer, that really gave us a very cost-effective solution, and unfortunately, that situation ended, and we moved into an arrangement with another organization that is frankly just much more expensive. We need an animal control organization in this town. I mean, it's clear we have a lot of wildlife, a lot of things that get into your house and get into your barns that need control. So it's a requirement to have an animal control. The cost has gone up significantly. We haven't addressed this cost, at least as long as I've been on the township committee, in terms of any kind of cost increase that's consistent with the cost of the township. And then there's also some new requirements for mailing out to owners that are going to cost the town hundreds of dollars in additional fees. So although as a dog owner and a dog lover, I'm going to have to pony up some extra bucks to have my little boy Blue re-registered every year. I think it's worth it.
Your little boy isn't little.
No, he's not little, but I think it's what we need to do in terms of supporting it. So with that, I'd like to see if there's a motion to introduce ordinance 18-22.
I'll move to introduce ordinance 18-22.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Aye.
The ordinance will be published in the November 15th, 2018 issue of the Hunterdon County Democrat, and the public hearing is set for the next regular Township Committee meeting on December 13th, 2018 at 7:30.
Thank you. Okay, we have no public hearings this evening, no special committee reports, unfinished business, an update regarding the 604 solar field. Rick, do you have an update on that?
I do. You made a very good point earlier about us having a great deal of difficulty with the solar company that installed the solar field on 604. I'm not going to go through all the things that we've dealt with just in my tenure on the Township Committee, but I want to focus on one, which is there was an issue regarding the solar company, and Mrs. Helen Reinerson, who lived next to the solar company or solar field, regarding screening between the solar field and her house and damage they did to her property during the construction of the solar field. We have an agreement, a written agreement that was signed this week, where the solar company agreed to plant additional trees to give Mrs. Reinerson additional screening, and she was given the opportunity to, and took the opportunity to, mark out exactly where those trees would go, so she's not at the mercy of the solar company's judgment. She got to use her own judgment and her family's judgment as to where to put them, and they're also fully reimbursing her for the damage they caused to her property. So there is a small light at the end of the tunnel in that they are ponying up the additional screening and for the damages. But it takes me back to where I was before. This is relatively nominal compensation for what she's had to go through over the last 4 or 5 years and what her family has had to go through over the last 4 or 5 years, and what she'll have to continue to go through as long as she lives in that house. But like I said, at least there's a small light at the end of the tunnel on this, in that she'll get additional trees and she will get compensated for the damage. That's all I have on that.
Yeah, and I would just add that, I mean, you think about the screening. I remember the pictures the solar company showed that would represent what the screening would look like. And, you know, it's been years, and it's not even 20% of what the
Doesn't
screening
look
should be.
anything like that.
Doesn't look anything like it. And that's why my comments earlier, I think, are appropriate. No matter how you codify screening or, blocking the view, given a hilly terrain that we're in, given the type of land we have, there's no way you can adequately screen these things from all the appropriate, or all the residents around it. So, I'm glad we finally got some resolution, and I feel for you, Helen, that you had to go through that, so.
Well, I want to thank everybody for everything they have done.
Well.
Thank you very much.
It was our pleasure.
Yep.
And one nice thing that came out of it is I got to know your family, and that was great.
Okay. Okay, next is new business. There is none, unless anyone has any new business. Okay. We're open to the public again. This is for anything on your mind. Yes,
Hi.
hi.
I wasn't planning to say anything.
Your name,
Oh,
please?
I'm
Please.
sorry. Lisa Davis. I live at 32 Stony Brook Road. I was here a couple of months ago. As you know, it was I have to say, a deeply unpleasant experience, and so I wasn't planning actually to address the Township Committee. I've been coming to the meeting since then without addressing you. But things arose during the course of this meeting, and I feel like I have to address them. The first, and I apologize if I'm out of order. I realize I maybe should have spoken about the helipad during the previous.
No,
public-
actually, that.
Is it okay?
Yeah, you can speak about it now,
Okay.
yeah.
I didn't know anything about it before tonight, but I have to say, hearing the discussion, I'm very concerned about it. And as you know, I'm on the Environmental Commission. I wish there was something we could do as a commission. Unfortunately, because our next meeting isn't going to be held until November 26th, we can't really conduct any business as an Environmental Commission between now and then, because due to the Sunshine Law. And if we were to hold a special meeting, then we would have public noticing requirements and so forth. So I can say that I will certainly reach out. I will just sort of make a general announcement by email to the other members, and maybe sort of individually, or maybe even in a subcommittee form, we might be able to pull some kind of response together. So I'll look into it. I do also want to say that if we had a robust, up-to-date environmental resource inventory ready to hand, it would be a fairly quick and easy matter to draft a provisional environmental impact statement based on our knowledge of what kinds of wildlife populations might be affected, for example, and other considerations of the region right around where the helipad is slated to go or being proposed to go. But as you know, we don't have one of those, and we've been trying very hard. We identified the compilation of an environmental resource inventory as one of our top priorities for this year, for 2018. And we have been trying to get resources to help us do that. We've been looking into grant opportunities. So far, we haven't been able to get anywhere. We're looking into a pilot project, working with ANJEC for next year, where we can do a sort of DIY approach to environmental resource inventory. But it's been very difficult to try and make any headway at all on this project. And so I just want to take this opportunity, because this is something of general collective concern that doesn't just crop up with specific development site plan applications, but is a general resource for the town. I just want to reiterate how much we on the Environmental Commission need the Township Committee's support on this issue. We would really love to have a robust, up-to-date environmental resource inventory to be able to use in situations like this when we need to be able to respond in a swift manner. So that's the first comment that I want to make. The second comment I want to make is that I was deeply upset, Mr. Wolf, by your comment about the 5-0. Your reference to the election, I have to say, I wonder how you think that comment will be heard by all the residents in this town who did not vote for your supported candidate, who are still residents and constituents and taxpayers. As deputy mayor, you represent all of us. As deputy mayor, you work for all of us. You are accountable to all of us, not just the people who vote for you and your friends. So I want you to think about the implications of the deeply partisan comment that you made just earlier in response to Joe Wolfgang's presentation. I also want to say, my understanding of the New Jersey Code of Ethics permits you as an elected official to engage in partisan political activity related to an election on your own time, so long as you're not using municipal resources. What it does not permit you to do is engage in partisan political activity related to an election during the discharge of your duties as deputy mayor, which is what you did tonight. So I'm very concerned about this. I feel extremely alienated from the township committee hearing a comment like that coming from the deputy mayor. And I'd like you to seriously reconsider the extremely partisan tone of your comments. Thank you.
Anyone else in the public have any comments? Yes.
Carol McGee, 11 Rosemont Ringos Road. I want to thank Tim and Rich for all that they've done for the solar field and helping Helen. It's helped immensely. Unfortunately, a couple years ago, when we were addressing things through with David, we truly felt that he was on our side. I was blown away to find that that's not true. It wasn't true. We walked that field for hours with Joanna Schlegel, complaining about the weeds and the asthma and all the other things, the allergies that Helen was feeling, to no avail, none. And I'm deeply disturbed by this. One other comment that I'll make, and then I'll call it a night. The Environmental Commission seemed to be very concerned about this helipad, but said nothing about the solar field, which poses far more risk from an environmental perspective with toxic waste. And I suggest that she look into that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Francis?
I'm still Frances Gavigan, almost older than God. Regarding the solar field, Mrs. McGee, I was at those fights. I wasn't on the Environmental Commission then, but I am now. I was also at Helen's and walking it and going and taking, whoops, I'm supposed to sit down, right? And walking and observing and taking real-time photographs, because that seems to be what I do, of the abysmal job that had been done in planting. There were, the trees were plopped in the ground, they were substandard, they weren't what was in the plan, and yes, I was at those meetings too, and they still had the burlap. Those poor trees didn't have a snowball in Hades shot at making it, plus they didn't water them. I would ask, and as a citizen and a member of the environmental or planning or anything else, I would like to know when they're going to plant these, and I would offer myself, and I think we can probably tag team to witness the planning and the care and the other kinds of things to give those next set of trees a shot at survival. One of the arguments that was made as to why the trees changed and the caliper went down had to do with the expense to the solar farm, and that was a waiver that was given, I believe, by an engineer or planner or both. That's past, the past is past. But the reality is, the cost to the developer is not the priority of this committee, which I believe is universally done, at least in this case, and in getting some relief. But I think where we need to do better is to be diligent about the follow-up after the approval, because the understanding that the public, the Reinersons and everyone else had, was that a plan was approved by the planning board that was going to be A for Apple. And when it got to the county and the roads and all that, it not only was changed without going back or noticing it, they botched it and drove over Mrs. Reinerson's and whatever to put their entrance in a place that wasn't there. That's an area where we can work smarter with the county and others to make sure that we close the loop, we circle things. As far as the timeliness,
Francis, hopefully we won't have another solar field and we'll never have to go through this again.
well, that's
Hopefully we
fine.
won't have to monitor this and chase the solar company when they turn on the switch when they don't even have the permit to do it.
That-
Hopefully we'll never have to deal with that again.
I'm a trust but verify kind of person. That's why it's part of being almost as old as God. What I was involved in with the other solar field that would have been in Mrs. McGee's backyard, or at least almost adjacent side yard, was how close we came to, I think, 160 acres of solar field.
Yeah.
And if not for sloppy,
A conflict of interest.
well, no, yes,
There
there was a
conflict of
last-minute conflict of interest that was revealed that shot that down. There would have been far more solar fields in East Amwell going back from Boss Road to John Ringo Road.
Yeah.
And the reasons for that were economic. The township took 5 years to come up with a tree ordinance, going way back to when. And that hard work and well-intentioned effort didn't do a dinky whatever to save the 10 acres of mature trees that were cut down, leaving stumps, because there was a contractual agreement between the owner and the solar applicant that to get a payout, those trees had to go. And we found ourselves with trees cut down and logging and no enforcement capacity. So time does not always, or good intentions do not always equal effective management. Persistence and transparency and watching what happens does help. And it's an evolution. We have gone over time. Every time things get better, and I'm sure some after the state comes up with their master plan and language in 2019, there may be further tweaking and there will be opportunities. But we came within, I think, 2 weeks of 160 acres of solar field, and without the vigilance of the public in noticing the fact that there were plans that were submitted as part of that package that referenced the company that the township engineer worked for, there but for the grace of God would have been a whole lot more solar fields. That's kind of the rest of the story. And guess what? That wasn't me. I think it was pointed out by Pauline Seraphin, who's not here. But we owe her, thanks for how close we came. And hopefully we will be working better together with the public and things like that in 2019 to have a more civil and polite and collaborative agreement. One of the atmosphere, one of the advantages or disadvantages of where I stand is that I sometimes hear things that do not get caught by these cameras. And I have observed, and I hope it's going to go away, that there's been, shall we say, events or coordinated efforts that would appear to be the rising of the people that were not necessarily that. And I have on tape, and it is audible, "Oh, wait, don't leave yet, because it's going to get really good now." And then there was this, that, and the other. These have gone on. The disadvantage of having been here for all these damn meetings, for all these damn years, from the planning board to the Board of Adjustment to even Board of Health, is that I have seen this theater before, and I would hope that the road show would stop and that we can have some civil discourse. And if I have to go into the archives to tease out what those, acts are, whether it's a beaver or an emoji or something the hell else, I will do so. And as an independent, ain't running for nothing, ain't loved by either side, if you want to, if this doesn't stop, that kind of thing will become also transparent. As far as what Mr. Wolf did 20-some years ago when he was in college,
Thank you, Francis.
I-
20 years?
no, whatever. Hey, I'm older than God, my brain is softening, or almost as old as God. I've been 4'11" 3/4" and not 112 or 6'3" for my whole life. But my earliest memories are of being chased and brutalized and beaten and choked by bullies, of being held back while kids who were old enough to know better, being restrained while they cut the head off of a pet of mine with a shovel. I didn't have anyone there. My brother tried to help me, but he was restrained too by this pack. There are students, only a couple years ago was that very talented musician at Rutgers committed suicide because of bullying and shaming. The country and the social equation and the norms are evolving. At times it goes too far, at times it swings back. We can have adult conversations about it. But as someone who has experienced it, as an adult, as a child, and in between, thank you, and for the rest of you or anyone to stand up for the truth and fairness, even if I don't agree, what Lisa said or Joe Wolfgang or anything like that. If somebody's got the guts to stand up and say something, even if I don't agree with it or you don't agree with it or anyone else, we still have the opportunity in this country to say what we believe and to hopefully improve and work together. That's the end of my soapbox, because I couldn't stand on the soapbox even if I was.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Apologies, just a quick question.
Sure.
Thought with regard to the helipad, Jamie Atkinson, 201 Worsville Road, the letter, would it be possible to publish that on the township website as a means to?
Absolutely.
Marvelous.
Allison, if I get that to you tonight, can we get it on tomorrow? It'll be on tomorrow.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes.
All right, Krista, you'll get it too.
Judith Glogal. I came for the heliport, but I actually am somewhat curious by the dog licensing issue.
Yes.
And not so much the raising in the fee, but what I feel is I think the services we're being rendered are lacking severely. And I have been trying to draft several people into making some sort of application to become an ACO for East Amwell. And if they could do so in a financially similar method, would that be something that East Amwell would be interested in?
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Oh, yeah, in a heartbeat. I would love to have somebody local.
I mean,
we
we've been lacking
recognize
for a while.
We,
Nate was great on
We're
one
not-
front.
how do I say this? We recognize that where we are in our existing arrangement is far from ideal.
He
And,
was
and
in that front.
if there's an alternative, somebody local, we absolutely would consider it in a heartbeat.
Is it possible to get a log of the services that, you said people need help getting things out of their houses or their
Didn't you
farms.
ask for that?
Did they actually ever come out for that?
Didn't you ask for a while? Yeah, I think I saw a report. We could double check. I recall they
I
sent a
thought you asked
report.
them for, I
Yeah,
thought
St.
you asked them to
Hubert.
send you one. I thought.
St. Hubert sent a
We
report.
should check. We might have one. I think we had asked for one a few months, or the mayor had asked for one a few months ago.
Yeah, St. Hubert's is who we're using
Yeah,
now.
I'm aware, and I've actually spoken to several people there, and of late, I've had to make a couple calls and haven't received a call back.
Oh.
Which, at least in the beginning, they would call you back, but I haven't even gotten callbacks.
Well, I'd
from
like to
them.
go back. I mean, I know that our previous person is no longer in the business, to say the least. But I remember he came out because we had a hummingbird stuck in our garage. And he actually came out and got it and took it away. It was wonderful. So
was responsive,
I'd
he
love
was
to find,
professional,
yeah,
it
I'd love to
was
find
great.
another ACO. I think our contract's through 2019. It was 2 years, I believe.
But a lot of these municipal contracts, and I looked at that one, but I don't remember it, but a lot of them have cancellation
Yeah.
provisions, so we have to see also.
Right. And I mean, I understand about pooling services because they're also serving West Amwell and probably Lambertville. And I've called
You
around
bring
in
us somebody
different
local
places.
and it's financially comparable, we're definitely interested.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say
Definitely
have them look into
I
our,
may retire early and
yeah.
take it on.
look into our requirements. We do have requirements for, I believe, insurance. So
Right,
just
I
make sure
understand
that
that.
you
Yep.
understand all those requirements first.
Yep, okay, great,
Good,
thank you very
thanks.
much.
Anyone else in the public? Yes.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Carolyn Murphy, and I'm not a resident of East Amwell, but I live in Hunterdon County in
Can I
Stockton.
have your address, please?
4 Glenwood Lane, Stockton. You need the zip? Okay. I actually am a certified animal control officer for the state of New Jersey, as well as a cruelty investigator, which is recently changed due to the laws. I actually wanted to come tonight to, I guess, sort of speak a little bit, but I just found out about the meeting, so I'm not really prepared. Many of the municipalities in Hunterdon are using a contracted service. Those contracted services cover 28 to 30 municipalities, with usually 1 or 2 full-timers on at the same time. However, the services that they offer, I think because they're spread so thin and they're contracted with so many towns, they're not able to complete the job accordingly as to what an ACO is supposed to really provide for a municipality. I currently do work as an animal control officer, part-time. I'm in Mercer County, I would love to be back in Hunterdon County. And that's one of the things I'm trying to do with the neighboring towns that I, live close to. Because I can see, and myself have had horrible experiences with lack of response, having to do things myself or call on other people, and just not getting the proper response that you should get. And it's not fair to the community, it's not fair to the animals or the municipality. Laws have changed. You may not even be aware. Just one of the examples is, as of February 1st, if you don't pass a local ordinance, your ACO cannot enforce any local ordinances. Not sure if you're aware of that, but that would be something that an ACO, if they worked for your town, would be on top of those things, be current, be able to provide that, be more hands-on with the community. The response rate would be a lot quicker. You'd get return phone calls. There's benefits to having an employed person. It doesn't have to be full-time, it could be part-time. But a lot of the municipalities are so small that these contracted services come in, bid low, and then they get 28 towns. But I have yet to hear of a town in Hunterdon, a municipality that has a contracted service that is really pleased with everything they're getting or not getting, so to speak. So I just thought I'd mention that. And
If you have a business card, you could leave it with the clerk, and when we go out to bid or request for quote, we'd be happy to include you.
Are you only doing contracted services though, or would you consider someone employed for your municipality or a shared service agreement with another town?
Well, I mean, we have lots of part-time employees around, so I don't think it's not unreasonable unless it comes with some overhead or equipment that we would have to provide, but I don't know how you would, I don't know, that's a tricky one, having an employee using their own vehicles and their own equipment to, put themselves in harm's way at times. So I would say at this point, we would probably be willing to think about it and see.
I'd be happy to put something.
We want to talk to our
Yeah.
insurance.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah.
When you say your address is Stockton, do you live in the Stockton borough?
I do.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you're pretty close.
Yes. Right around the corner.
I run down there, so it's
Oh,
not that-
okay.
it's- no, it
Yeah.
is. Okay, I just,
I think there's just a lot of things that an ACO that, is actually employed by a town, even if they're part-time and they work in 3 or 4 towns, opposed to 28 municipalities, I mean, you get a emergency call, and they're up in Rahway, but then you call down here in, East Amwell with an emergency, but they're following up on that. You may get a call back, you may not, but who's the backup? We're required by law to respond within a timely manner, meaning an hour or less. For wildlife, sick or injured, domestic animals, all sorts of stuff, so.
yeah, look, I want to get my arms around the insurance, but there is something attractive about having your animal control officer on the payroll.
Accountability.
That's what I was really getting at. There's a stronger nexus between an employer and an employee than an employer and an independent contractor that's servicing 47 municipalities.
Mm-hmm.
It's intriguing. I'm really glad you came tonight, actually. I'm very, very glad you came.
I'm glad I got a chance to speak, because I was running late, and I said, I'm not gonna get there in time, but, I'd be happy to even draw up something that, shows the difference or the benefits of a contracted service versus, an employed ACO. I can't speak for all certified animal control officers, but, the ones that I'm familiar with that are, looking to get into some of the towns, local towns, it's because they're in their backyard. They want to deal with the community local.
I'm glad you came. Thank
Yeah.
you.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the public?
Move we close to the public.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Before you move on, can I
Yes.
take a minute again?
absolutely.
I wasn't actually planning to get to this, but since Ms. Davis brought it up, I thought I would follow up on something Francis said. The other side of the story are things that go on behind the scenes that you don't see on the camera. Ms. Davis complained that she was abused at the township committee meeting where she came in to talk about the green team. I went back and watched that video. And I invite the public to watch that video because she wasn't abused. She kept asking the same questions 3 or 4 times, kept getting the same answers from me, didn't like those answers, and that constituted abuse. So what did that spin into? Well, that spun into an article or a letter to the editor in the VIP. Supposedly an unsolicited, unbiased letter to the editor complaining how there's abuse at the township committee. Well, let me tell you the rest of the story. There was an email from the editor of the VIP, Mike Petrus, to all the volunteers in East Amwell, adding signatures to letter to the editor VIP. He, as the editor of the VIP, circulated a draft letter to the editor, much broader than what was ultimately published, asking people to sign it. And then the VIP was going to pass that off as something neutral, a letter to the editor. What he ultimately got, because I assume he failed miserably in trying to get a lot of volunteers to sign, so he had to settle for a letter to the editor from the Environmental Commission. Mike Petrus comes in here on a regular basis saying that I should apologize to residents for my behavior. Mike Petrus should come in here and apologize because what he did was downright slimy. And not only does he hurt his own reputation, not only does he hurt the reputation of the Environmental Commission, he destroys the credibility of the VIP. Not that the VIP had any credibility anyway, because it's not a coincidence that this kind of garbage appears every October in the VIP, supposedly written by a disinterested resident, when in fact it's fed by the editors of the VIP, and now there's concrete proof. The other thing I would like to comment on is Ms. Davis talks about getting political. This letter to the editor from the Environmental Commission was purely political. You are supposed to be an apolitical committee that looks out for the residents of East Amwell, and not someone that's manipulated by the VIP to do this stuff during the campaign season. So Ms. Davis, take a good look in the mirror. Go back and watch the video again. You weren't abused. You got your questions answered truthfully and honestly. You didn't like the answer. You didn't get the result you want. You equate that to abuse. That's not abuse. That's the political system in action. You don't always get what you want. We don't write blank checks. This town isn't in a position to write blank checks. That's all I have to say.
May I make a follow-up comment as
Sure,
well?
please.
I would just like to respond to Carol McGee. I fully appreciate her comments, and I hope she understands that I am fully aware of the issues surrounding Mrs. Reinerson's being adjacent to the solar field. We tried very hard with the contractor to address the issues associated with that solar field, and hopefully tonight with Rick's work, some of those or most of them have been addressed. But my concern about the ordinance amendment is not in any way to belittle the issues associated with these facilities. I mean, I am 100% aware of what went on there. I was the one that called the BPU to see if we had any leverage with the utility and the contractor about getting that system online before they had their certificate of approval. So there are many, many issues associated with these solar fields. I'm simply not convinced at this point that Mr. Wolf's approach is the correct one, and I would like more information from our land use professionals. I would like to have more input from the public. And it may be that ultimately this is the approach that the township takes, but I just think that we need more input. So, I'm sorry, Carol, that you feel the way you do, and but I just think that taking a little more time right now will be better for the town in the long run.
I'd like to follow up on the solar field.
Sure.
David, you and your colleagues totally dropped the ball on that solar field. First of all, it never should have been built. It couldn't even satisfy our ordinance, because they're supposed to be screening, shielding it from 604, and under federal regulations, you can't put the screening there because the wires are there. That solar field never should have been built. So you dropped the ball. You and I had an email exchange where I was willing to go to war over this, and you responded back to me saying you're not willing to go to war over this. And the only reason you acted on any of these requests is when you were pushed to act, when people like Carol and the Reinersons came in and pushed you to act. That's the only reason you acted. You weren't proactive on this. You only did it when people came in and pushed. And I've seen firsthand what they've gone through. I've been working with them now for months. And I don't mean 2 or 3 months, I mean a lot of months, and I've seen what they've gone through. And no resident in this township should ever have to go through what Helen has had to go through, what Carol has had to go through. And it just pisses me off to no end that Helen, who is 90 years old, has to spend whatever time she has left on this earth jerking around with that solar field. That just makes me really, really mad, and that's why I was willing to go to war. Fortunately, it didn't come to that. And while people here can criticize me about being a lawyer and being a lawyer in a large firm, I have to believe that had some impact with the solar company, that I had some credibility when I said, we're not letting this one go. But the bottom line is, I'm going to fight really hard for this ordinance because I don't want another solar field. I don't know what you think people have to think about and discuss. I'm blown away by this. You're the one who's saying Republicans equal development. Republicans equal development. This isn't development, David. You're saying we need to think about this. Maybe there are other considerations. What other considerations? Why do you think, under what circumstance should we have a commercial solar field on a farm in East Amwell? Give me a set of circumstances.
Inherent beneficial use.
David, there's a report from the DEP that says that in order to satisfy the solar objectives, the clean energy objectives of New Jersey, we would have to use a tiny fraction, I believe it's less than 1% of the preferred land. We don't have to touch non-preferred land like farmland. I'm just blown away. I had assumed you would be fully behind this. I am totally blown away. And when you guys send out stuff, Republicans equal development, particularly knowing you and I sat at the Hunter Land Trust farm-to-table dinner. You think I'm pro-development? Do you really think I'm pro-development? Do you really think that when I said, I'm going to dismantle what the EADA has done over 30 years, and when you read what I said, it was the slimy government, do you think I was talking about the open space? Really, David? Really? You want to sit here with a straight face and say to me, yeah, Rick, I think you're pro-development. I think your goal is to dismantle what we've done over the last 30 years. How about you, Les? How about Nancy? Nancy, you were at the dinner with me. You really think I'm pro-development? Come on, guys, I'll reopen this. Speak up. I'm pro-development? Really? What's going on here is I'm blown away, absolutely blown away, that David is sitting here questioning this ordinance, saying that there are circumstances where we should have commercial solar fields on our farms in East Amwell. I am totally blown away.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we need more information to make sure that this is the right approach.
Well,
That's
what other
all.
approach is there, David? There's either you
There's
allow
an
them
approach.
or you don't. It's
Okay,
not
I'm gonna-
rocket science. It's
I'm
not
gonna-
rocket science.
there's-
It's either yes or no.
There's an approach where the existing ordinance could be modified to tighten up the issues that we dealt with
David,
the 604.
either you're
solar
allowing them or you're not. We can tighten up the ordinance, but either you say to me, we tighten up the ordinance, but under certain circumstances they could build them, or you say, let's tighten up the ordinance to such an extent that they could never build them. If that's what you're saying, then why are you fighting my ordinance that says it straight out that you can't
Okay.
build them?
We're off topic.
By the way, Joanna Slagle did review this, just so you know. Our planner reviewed this and she gave me significant comments on it.
Okay.
So you know that the planner looked at this too.
All
So
I'm
the
saying-
planning board lawyer looked at it, our planner looked at it, Don Riley looked at it, Tam Lee looked at it. I spent 50 or 60 hours on this at least. So to say that this hasn't gone through some sort of review process, it has. If you want the public to have input, they'll have input. But I am totally, totally blown away that we're having this discussion. Totally blown away. I never anticipated this. I didn't expect you to pat me on the back and say good job, but I didn't expect that we would be having this discussion.
Okay, let's, we're going to resume this discussion next month during the public hearing, and we can have more debate about it. Okay, at this point, we're going to take a short executive session to discuss a contract, and it shouldn't be too long.
We have a motion to close the public?
I think we need consensus.
Just a consensus.
Yeah.
if
We
I
have
recall
consensus?
Correctly.
I mean, a motion for, I'm sorry, a resolution.
Motion to close the public.
Yeah.
Or no, we already did, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we
I
did
we
close.
need a motion to go into executive session, a resolution.
No, I
Don't think so.
yeah, we're supposed to have consensus to go into executive. That's what Terry's told us, but we could have a motion. Does anyone?
I'll move, we go to executive session, how's that?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, okay, just in case.
Administrative reports. All right, let's go.
Come on.
They're obviously not interested in coming back in.
They're out there chatting. Let's finish it up.
Okay. Okay. So, item 17, the administrative reports, the bills of the evening.
I move the bills of the evening.
Second,
All in
Wait,
favor?
wait, hold on. Who was that?
Pete,
I move the bills of the evening.
and Rick seconded.
We're going too fast for you.
Any
Good-looking guy
any
down
questions?
the
It's really good, like, with your motions, like, I was able to get your names, like, perfectly. Nice and slow. It's
Nice and
wonderful.
slow.
Any questions on the bills of the evening?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Oh,
We have,
Mary's got stuff.
Mary's got some,
Yes.
Disbursements.
You have them in your packet, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
there is,
This is redemption tax sales.
okay, let's find it here.
It should be in your little packet.
Oh, here we go, redemption tax sale. We got a redemption tax sale of amount of 61,000 for the premium paid for the tax sale certificate 2018-01 be prepared, and that these checks be mailed to Tower DB.
I move the redemption tax sale certificate.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And there's a second redemption tax sale certificate for 18,000. Premium for tax sale certificate 2018-02 be prepared, and these checks be mailed to Christiana TC/F.
Wait a minute, for which one?
There's-
18,000?
We did
We did the big one.
the 61,000. The second one is 18,000?
It's actually two checks.
Oh,
One for 13.
Oh, there.
1340, right? And
Yeah.
I see 13,244.
Yeah, that's one check, and then there's another for
There's
18,000.
Am I missing a page here?
Yeah, there's two, but it's the be it further resolved, right?
This one
Whereas-
is 13, and then
Yeah.
this one is 1,300.
Yes, I
Yeah.
see that. 13 and 1,300.
Oh, no, that check right here is
13,000
18,000.
plus 18,000 on this one.
Yeah, but this is just saying the
Therefore,
whereas.
resolve the
It's-
check in the
it's
amount
been
be prepared
collected.
by the mayor, and an additional check for the premium paid.
Okay. Okay, so there's two checks
Yes,
on both of these, actually.
check 87 and 60, yeah, there are
Okay.
two checks.
So scratch my reading into the record, just add these to the record as written.
All right.
You
Okay.
want them all as
All three?
Pete
Yeah.
and Rick? Okay.
I'll
Yeah, that's-
second all three. Pete will,
Okay.
Yes, all first, all three.
and I'll second it.
All right.
Okay. All in
Should've done
favor?
that as a packet.
Aye.
Okay. Municipal court clerk report, did everybody see that? Again, I'll have to double check. I didn't see Jason was gonna provide a new form of report. Yeah, I didn't see it in the Google. Did anyone else see it in the Google Drive? Maybe I'm looking at the
Truth be
Google
honest,
Drive
I never
wrong.
get into the Google, I gotta figure out how to get into
Hey,
it.
Yeah, okay. And the state police report?
Pam. Okay. This is what you're up against, all
What
right?
does
You're up
that
against
tell
my
you?
flip phone, all right?
Okay. We have the West Amwell Township Police Report. Now, I don't know how many more, they threatened that they were gonna stop immediately,
I'm gonna, I gotta set up the meeting with the
but they
mayor
owe us
and-
1 hour.
And I'm gonna talk.
And I'm gonna hold them to that.
I'm gonna talk to the
Okay.
mayor, see what I can
And
do.
then the construction report, item G, okay. Correspondence, any questions on correspondence? Okay.
Move we adjourn?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, great,
All right, we have to sign checks.
yes.